When you think of a delicious, thirst-quenching beverage, you probably don't think vinegar. But that is exactly what this raspberry shrub from 1911 is. So thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video as we make Shrub, this time on drinking history. There are many versions of Shrub. They can be made with pretty much any berry or fruit, and they can be either part of a non-alcoholic or an alcoholic beverage. This recipe from Good Things to Eat, as suggested by Rufus, by the first African-American celebrity chef, Rufus Estes, is made with raspberry and says, put 1 quart of ripe raspberries in a bowl, add 2 cups of vinegar, mash the berries slightly, and let stand overnight. In the morning, scald and strain until clear. Measure, and to each cup of juice add 1 cup of sugar, boil 20 minutes, and seal. So that is the recipe for Shrub, which actually isn't the beverage itself, but simply a syrup that is usually mixed with other liquids like water or sometimes rum or other spirits. And this is one of the new recipes that I've included in the Tasting History Cookbook, an excellent Father's Day gift if you still haven't got one. And in it, I suggest making it with sparkling water, but like I said, you can make it with pretty much anything, and adding a little gin at the end doesn't hurt at all. So for this recipe, what you'll need is 1 quart or 700 grams of fresh, ripe raspberries, 2 cups or 475 milliliters of white wine vinegar. You could also use apple cider vinegar, but I have found that the color at the end is not as pretty. To that end, don't use any kind of dark vinegar like a balsamic vinegar, that's not going to work. And don't use white distilled vinegar because the flavor is going to be all off and frankly not very good. Then 3 cups or 600 grams of sugar. So first put the raspberries in a small saucepan and mash the berries just enough so there are no full berries left. You don't need to mash it up like into a puree, but it does need to be mashed fairly well so it can release all of its wonderful flavors into the white wine vinegar as you pour that on top. Then give it a couple more mashes and cover the saucepan and let it sit for at least 12 hours. You can let it sit for really as long as you want, up to a day or a couple days, but at least 12 hours. Otherwise, you're going to just end up with vinegar. Now, after 12 hours of sitting, uncover the saucepan and set it over a medium heat and bring to a boil. Let it boil for just 1 minute and then remove it from the heat and pour the mixture through a sieve into a larger saucepan. You want to gently press as much juice out as you can, but you don't want any pieces of the raspberry to actually go through the sieve, so just be gentle. If something does go through the sieve, just pass it through again. You want a nice clear liquid. Then add the sugar and whisk it until mostly dissolved, and then set the pan over a medium-low heat and bring to a simmer, and simmer for about 20 minutes, stirring occasionally. You just want to make sure that all of the sugar is nice and dissolved and that it turns into a syrup. And once it's simmered for 20 minutes, remove it from the heat and let it cool completely. And there you have your drinking vinegar. And while that may sound weird, let me assure you, vinegar-based beverages have been around for a very long time. Since wine has existed, so too has wine vinegar. But as it turned into vinegar, people would still drink it, and it was thought to actually be rather healthy. Drinks like Posca, which I've made here on the channel, were the go-to thirst quencher for ancient Roman legionaries. And in ancient Persia and still modern-day Iran, they make a drink called sekanjabin, which is made with vinegar and mint and is considered quite refreshing. And the syrup that is made with is just one in a whole line of what are called sharbat, coming from the old Arabic word sharab, which means drink. Now this old word, sharab, not only gave the Persians sharbat, but the Turkish sherbet, the French sorbet, and even the English word syrup by way of medieval Latin. And of course, it also gave us the word shrub, at least when it's referring to the syrup or the drink, rather than a shrubbery, like the one that the Knights That Say Ni wanted.
It is a good shrubbery!
Now, while the ancient Persian version of the drink was often made with vinegar, it wasn't always so. Sometimes it was made with citrus, and the acidic syrup was used as a way to preserve other fruits for a long period. And rather than mixing it into a drink, sometimes it was poured over snow, similar to a modern-day snow cone, and that was probably what ended up coming to Europe in the late Middle Ages and became very popular in 16th century Italy and France. From here we get sorbetto, sorbet, and early versions of gelato and even ice cream. But under the name Shrub, it was a beverage, and that is what ended up becoming popular in 17th and early 18th century England, where it was often mixed with things like wine, brandy, or even rum. In fact, sometimes the sugar was dispensed with altogether, and it was just a drink of citrus and rum. In 1747, even though citrus's connection with preventing scurvy was still not accepted by the British Navy, the Gentleman's Magazine nonetheless spoke of the necessity for citrus aboard ships. But if this is not so feasible, a mixture of lemon juice and rum, shrub as they call it, may be carried in any quantity, as it will keep a long time, and would prove infinitely more wholesome than the nasty, fiery, poisonous spirits which are dealt about so largely in the Navy and elsewhere. Now, precisely what spirits he's talking about there, I'm not entirely sure, but it may have been gin, because at that time, London was going through the London gin craze, and it was being blamed for all sorts of horrible things, like people's deaths and their desire to commit infanticide. And I did a whole video on that. It is a fascinating time in English history. But it was really strictly limited to gin, because rum didn't have the same stigma, and so rum is actually one of the ingredients in this author's version of Shrub. And drinking alcohol in general seems to have been a good thing, as he recommends every sailor should have at least a pint of cider a day besides beer and water. And I would advise also a frequent and free use of vinegar in the seaman's diet, especially when the provisions begin to grow rancid. So should your meat turn gray and worms infest your hardtack, a little vinegar will do you good. He also talks of the ancient Roman soldiers drinking posca, or wine vinegar diluted in water or wine. And he says that if it's good enough for a Roman soldier, why should we not have as much regard to that of a British sailor, who is altogether as brave and as useful to the Commonwealth? Though it seems that in the British Navy, Shrub ended up kind of losing out to a far more complex way of imbibing citrus and rum, and that was punch, which deserves an entire video all of its own. Now, even as its popularity began to decline in England, Shrub was all the rage in the 13 colonies. Though we colonists couldn't always afford or get our hands on good citrus like lemons and limes, and so we replaced it with vinegar. One recipe from 1695 called for a little vinegar or verjuice, or lemon juice or lime juice, which of them you can get. Colonial America seems to have really embraced the vinegar-based beverage, because there was another drink called switchel, which was again made with vinegar, but instead of fruit, the main flavor was usually ginger or other spices, and that also deserves an entire video of its own. Now, in the mid-19th century, with the temperance movement in full swing, these vinegar shrubs dropped the rum and instead became more like the shrubs of ancient Persia, just flavored vinegar. And by the mid-20th century, Shrub had really lost popularity in general, mainly due to the fact that now you could preserve fruits using like refrigeration and other preservation methods, and you had things like soft drinks, Coke and Pepsi and whatnot to satisfy that sweet tooth without having to drink vinegar. But in the last 15 or 20 years, Shrub has really made a comeback and is now a common thing to see on hipster cocktail menus all over, or in the Tasting History cookbook. So once your shrub has cooled, then you can drink it as is, usually over ice, but if you prefer, and I prefer, I would add a little sparkling water and mix it all together. And here we are, Rufus Estes' Raspberry Shrub. So first off, the color. It's so beautiful. This is about a half cup of the syrup, and then I filled it up the rest of the way with sparkling water. Just a gorgeous color. It does take a little stirring to get it to mix completely, because it is like a thick syrup, the shrub is, so they don't necessarily want to combine, but you can force it. Also, as you're cooking shrub, your house will smell like vinegar, but this drink, it doesn't smell like vinegar at all. Really, all that you're left with is that kind of sweet raspberry flavor, which is very nice. Here we go. So the texture is, the mouthfeel is really what I love. It's not syrupy, but it's really smooth because there's syrup in it. So it's just this really smooth drink. And the first thing that hits is that raspberry, and it's very sweet, and it's like, oh wow, a lot of raspberry flavor is there. And then you get that acidic punch from the vinegar, but not unpleasantly so. You don't get like the that part of vinegar that makes your nose sting. It's just the acid, almost like a kind of sweet and sour cocktail like you might get with a good lemon drop or something like that. You get that wonderful combination of the sweet and then the sour, but they're almost separate. Now this is a wonderful, refreshing drink for summer. It's delightful, but couldn't hurt to have a little gin added in there because it is usually or very often an alcoholic drink, and you could put rum in there. Just put a little bit and then stir it in. You could put rum in there or vodka, really whatever you want. But I like gin. This was, what is this? St. George Botanivore gin. They sent me this. Thank you, St. George. Absolutely delicious. I'll put a link in the description to where you can get that if you want it. Yeah, that's good. Just adds like another little layer of flavor, and now it's alcoholic. It's good. So I actually am thinking of making this shrub and some other shrubs and bottling it and selling it, because it is kind of a, it's who wants their house to smell like vinegar? But I think that these deserve to have a comeback. So I am thinking of bottling it and selling it. And I would do that on my new website, which is still in the works, the tastinghistory.com website that I am building with some help from Squarespace, who is our sponsor today. And if I do sell products, Squarespace makes it easy to sell products online, either physical or digital. They have a powerful suite of tools to manage orders, inventory, and even bookkeeping. And they offer the ability to set up email campaigns so that you can connect with your customers and keep them up to date on new products. They also have a suite of powerful blogging tools that will allow me to keep all of my recipes there on the Tasting History website. I'm really, really excited. It is still a work in progress, but my goal is to have it up by the end of this summer. So if you also want to start a website, go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you are ready to launch, then go to squarespace.com/tastinghistory for 10% off of your first purchase of a website or domain. And I will see you next time on Drinking History.